Hello, and welcome to the brand spanking new Sistery History podcast. I'm Big Sister Laura.
And I'm Little Sister Caroline.
Together on this podcast, we'll discuss a historical event or experience from a sensory perspective. This means we'll focus on smells, sounds, tastes, haptics, which Caroline reliably informs me means touch, as well as sights. Hopefully, we really hope, this will be interesting, perhaps thought-provoking, but mainly we want to keep things lighthearted and accessible. To kick things off, we are travelling back in time to ancient Rome, the late Republic and the Imperial Age to be precise, for a day at the Games. Now, you might have an idea in your head already about gladiators, crowds cheering, wild animals chasing Christians around, but what about how the arena itself looked? What could you smell and feel? And by the gods, what on earth is that man wearing? Caroline, you've got a lovely looking primary source over there. Who is it and what have they got to say for themselves?
Well, I've got a little bit of Marshall, who loves talking about the nitty gritty, shall we say. I'm going to read you epigram number 8. And interestingly, you mentioned, what is that man wearing? Because by the gods, what is this man wearing? Here we go. Epigram 8, which is called On Faces. It's a little bit long, so bear with me. The edict of our supreme lord and ruler, by which the seats in the theatre are more exactly defined, and the night is allotted a place free from contact with the vulgar, was lately the theme of Phasis' approbation in the theatre, where, flaming with purple robes, he was boasting proudly in a pompous tone, "At length we can sit more at our ease. The dignity of our knighthood is now restored. We are not pressed or contaminated by the mob." These and such remarks was this upstart uttering when Latius ordered his arrogant purple robes to change their seat. Right, so if we unpick that.
So Phasis is a person.
Correct.
He is wearing the fantastic purple robes?
He is wearing a lovely set of purple robes.
Okay, I do like purple.
But he's unfortunately sitting somewhere where he doesn't quite belong. He has decided to sit himself down among the knights.
Okay, so he's not wearing the wrong clothes, he's just in the wrong row.
Technically, he's a bit of both.
Right.
So, as I understand it, I don't think that Phasis is a knight. In fact, he's definitely not. And secondly to that, purple is normally a colour reserved only for the imperial family.
Yeah.
So what you've got here is a bloke who is a bit jumped up and wearing the wrong clothes and sitting in the wrong seats.
Yeah, okay. So he's really trying it on there, isn't he?
He's trying it on. But what I think is interesting here is the very visual nature of a day at the Games. You can go in, you can instantly see, oh, right, that man is wearing purple. He's in the imperial family. That man sitting over there, he must be a knight.
Yeah. So the position in the seating structure.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that's something that you don't necessarily think of initially when you're considering a day out at the Games. You're not necessarily thinking, here's a bloke wearing a lovely purple robe. He definitely shouldn't be wearing one. Now, if we talk about these laws regarding dress, Augustus, so he dictated, and actually several of the emperors did, that everyone has to wear white. And I just want to read you another really quick extract. Obviously, it's Marshall again, because I love Marshall. It's on a man called Horatius. Horatius was the only one among all the spectator of the Games who appeared in black clothes, when the plebeians, the knights, and the senate, with their sacred chief, were sitting in white array. Suddenly snow fell in great abundance, and Horatius became a spectator in white. Again, you're supposed to if you're a citizen of Rome, you've got to wear white. You've got to wear a lovely white toga, and that shows A, your citizenship, and B, that you are participating in that citizenship.
Ah, I see. So you're being a bit of a rebel if you dress
Correct.
differently because you're bucking the trend.
Yes.
Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Augustus famously wanted the forum to be a sea of white
Okay.
because the toga, the white toga, is the mark of the male Roman citizen.
Okay. So the sophistication, the sense of sophistication and order, and an empire under control.
Absolutely. All about control. That's what we want. We want order. We want control.
So Phasis, with his wild purple robes billowing, he sounds like my kind of chap. Or Horatius with his black, his black outfit.
Yeah.
They're going to be really obvious and stick out.
Absolutely.
They want to be noticed though, don't they?
Well, it may be a bit of that. I mean, obviously, purple was a very expensive colour as well to be wearing. So there's probably a little bit of showing off there. Don't know about Horatius. Maybe he was just having an awful day and just feeling a bit...
Maybe he was mourning. Also, I think it's really unlikely that heavy snow fell just at that moment. That seems highly convenient.
I'm quoting Marshall here. If you want to take us up with him, please go ahead.
Fine.
But so, yeah, that's what I wanted you to think about.
Okay. And that's not something that we would think about today. When you go to the theatre, there are different areas to sit in and ticket prices.
If you're going to if you're going to appear at a formal public event, put your toga on. It's like wearing a suit, basically.
Okay.
Suit and tie.
Yeah.
Don't show up in jeans.
Don't show up in jeans to a wedding reception. It's not done.
Please don't. Augustus would be livid.
He would be.
So what have you got to regale us with?
So my first extract is from De Rerum Natura, Lucretius, book 4. The translation there is On the Nature of Things. This is nice and broad. And commonly the awnings, saffron, red and dusky blue, stretched overhead in mighty theatres, upon their poles and crossbeams fluttering, have such an action quite, for there they die and make to undulate with their every hue the circled throng below, and all the stage and rich attire in the patrician seats, and ever the more the theatre's dark walls around them shut, the more all things within laugh in the bright suffusion of strange glints, the daylight being withdrawn. And therefore, since the canvas hangings thus discharge their dye from off their surface, things in general must likewise their tenuous effigies discharge. Do you know what's going on there?
I think he's describing light shining through shining through the awnings and the plays of shadow and I don't know, dust particles.
Yes, probably dust particles. So what they used to do is they'd have these big awnings that they would stretch over the crowd during the games, if I imagine if it was particularly hot, so to protect people from the sun.
Or the rain.
Or the rain, yeah, potentially both. They were apparently really difficult to manipulate because of their size. Obviously, if you think about how many people the Colosseum could seat. And obviously, when they were windy, they made a really big flapping noise, which could be quite funny, I imagine.
And how would you hear what was going on over the flapping?
I don't know. I don't know how loud the flapping was in relation to the death throes of the wild beasts and the Christians.
That's it. I've never thought about that kind of the noise of the flapping of the actual structure itself.
No.
And I guess if you're the closer you are to them, so if you're in the high seats at the back, you know, you're poor or you're a woman, heaven forbid, or a slave, or for someone who definitely can't afford a seat near the front, that must be even louder for them.
Yes, I think so. Definitely. What I liked about this particular extract was not actually, I wasn't focused on the flapping sound, which now I feel I really missed a trick there. It's not what I'll think about from now on. It was actually the visuals of the colours. So at the beginning, they talk about saffron and red and blue. Those are your three primary colours, therefore. So you've got yellow, red and blue. Theoretically, through those three colours, you can make all the other colours, right? So however those awnings flapped around visually, you're potentially seeing loads and loads of different colours all around you, wherever you looked. Like a rainbow. Yeah. It sounds beautiful, doesn't it? And if you add in the wind element, you've got the potential for those to be constantly changing around you. And as you said, it's the tricks of the light and the movement. So I just thought that was a really nice visual.
You don't get that in indoor theatres now, do you? Imagine going to see a play.
No.
It's all very, the lighting is very, obviously it's controlled.
Yeah, it's controlled, isn't it? And it's very specific to what you're looking at, with spotlights and floodlights and all of that sort of thing.
There's definitely no flapping.
No flapping. Well, no intentional flapping anyway. You've got a lot of words in that extract that talk about movement. So fluttering, undulate, glints. There's lots of indications of movement, which I thought was it's very poetic, really.
Well, is he a poet? Lucretius? Let's say yes.
Yeah, let's say yes. Let's go with yes. Other thing I wrote in my notes here was the visual contrast. So you've got bright and glints and daylight versus things like dark walls, daylight being withdrawn, the word shut. So nice contrast there between the bright and the dark.
Love it.
Yeah, so there we go.
Maybe we should all go to a little bit more open air theatre.
It must have been really quite a different experience to what we're used to now, although you're at the mercy of the elements as well. So it could be quite a depressing, rainy, drizzly experience as well. But,
this is true.
But, I think Rome probably faring better in the weather stakes than, say, the South Bank.
Well, I do know that in ancient Greece, when they put on their plays, I think it was 3 a day. And the one in the late afternoon would often be set so that the sun was setting.
Oh, you mean the story?
Yeah, so the story would kind of reflect the time of day that was actually being performed at.
Yeah.
Which I think is quite nice.
That is a nice touch. Okay, so that was my extract 1.
I'm obviously going to talk about Marshall again because...
You've got 2 Marshalls.
He's a great guy.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he is, actually. I might have to look into it. I'm going to go with he's a fun guy.
Okay.
I've got another epigram of his to read. And here I want you to consider a very specific part of this extract.
Okay.
It's extract 25, which is called On Cherestratus, a Night in Reduced Circumstances. Now, again, we're picking up on that theme that we just discussed in my previous extract. So a person in the knight class of society had certain privileges, had a horse, was allowed to wear rings.
Sorry, could other people not wear rings? Is that true?
I've got it in my head that only people can wear a gold ring. I'm going to have to look that up.
Okay.
Right. So what I want you to focus on here is how something might feel. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You have not 400,000 sesterces, Cherestratus. Rise, Latius is coming. Quick, away with you. Run, hide yourself. Does anyone call him back and restore him to the seat he is leaving? Does any patron offer him a share of his lordly riches? Is there such a person whose name we may commit in verse to fame and the applause of the people? Where is he who does not wish to sink in obscurity to the waters of Styx? Would not such generosity, I ask, he better than to sprinkle the stages with a rufous cloud and to be drenched with a shower of saffron water? Or than to spend 400,000 sesterces upon a horse which will not appreciate it, or that the nose of Scorpus may glisten everywhere in gold? O rich man, rich to no purpose, and faithless to your friend, do you read and approve these verses? What glory do you allow to escape you? Any idea what's going on?
Is someone trying to escape through the crowd?
Ish.
It said Latius is coming. Quick.
Yes. Okay. So we know who Latius is, don't we?
Do we?
He was in the previous extract that I read.
The man with the amazing...
Latius is in charge of the seating.
Okay.
At the arena. And what's happened here is Cherestratus is a knight or was a knight.
Mm-hmm.
He has now not the money to
maintain his status.
maintain his knightly status in the
Okay.
equestrian class. So he's had a little seat in the area of the arena that he used to sit in, I suppose. And Latius is coming to take a ticket.
And
he's in the wrong seat because he hasn't got the money anymore.
These people keep poor Latius on his toes, don't they?
Latius is a very busy man, I'm presuming. So what Marshall is actually commenting on here is he's saying, these people used to be your friends. Why can't they lend you some money so you can maintain your knightly class?
Mm-hmm.
Do they not want the fame of doing such a generous and lovely gift? Basically, he's saying your friends are rubbish and they only like you when you have your money.
Fair weather friends.
Fair weather friends is what he's saying. But what this extract picks up on, which is what I want to talk about, it's this idea of this rufous cloud.
Yes. Red cloud.
Reddy cloud. And then he also said, drenched with a shower of saffron water.
Mm.
Now, this is a thing that they used to do in the theatre, which was sprinkle definitely the stage, but perhaps the spectators too, with sparsiones. Now, sparsiones is essentially sprinklings.
Is that's the translation, is it?
Correct.
Right.
Saffron, very, very expensive.
Mm.
Saffron also has a scent. And the idea of your visual theatrical experience being scented with saffron water, maybe you're covered in saffron water, maybe your white glistening toga is now glistening gold because you have been sprinkled, because you had the finest seats at the front of the theatre. Here we go with that whole visual wealth again. If you come away 4 p.m. sprinkled in gold, you're literally glowing in gold. Everyone's going to know that you got some cash.
You got some cash because you've been near the front of the stage.
You've been near the front of the stage. You're going to smell like you've been to the theatre. I love this because I went on a 9D experience.
9D?
I didn't know there were 9.
No.
I can't list them all, but partway through the experience, I got sprayed with water. Mm-hmm. And there was some perfume sprayed into the room, pumped into the room. And I think that this is very reminiscent of that.
Mm-hmm.
You tie the smell and the visual of the gold and the droplets and the touch of the sprinklings on your skin would all tie you into this experience and remind you of it. So if you smelt that smell again, if you saw that color again, it would just
bring it all back.
Take you back to that lovely day at the games.
Yeah. In the extract, it said he was drenched. That sounds expensive then. I mean, and who's paying for this saffron?
Events and games and shows would be sponsored by a rich patron. So perhaps someone from the equestrian class. Someone who's got the money to do it. Exactly.
They're fronting the cash for the saffron.
I mean, it's a huge expense, saffron. Pliny goes on about how expensive it is to crush 9 million crocuses to make 1 cubic centiliter of whatever.
Wow, they had some cash to burn, didn't they?
Really did.
Back in the day.
But the other thing I think is this could have been used to cool down a crowd. There's a really, really good book on this, actually, by Jo Day. And she mentions that some of the adverts for shows in Pompeii that are still remaining, perhaps carved into a stone, show on Saturday, blah, blah, blah. They mention this show has sprinklings.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It would be like, oh, maybe it's a really hot Saturday afternoon and I don't want to go to a show with no sprinklings. I want to be cooled down as an audience member.
Yeah, so it's like saying, oh, you can have a glass of Prosecco on arrival to something.
Or like free popcorn or something like that.
Or, you get something free at half time.
It's something to mention in the advertising.
Nice.
Something that is so, so lovely. I just really love the idea of it.
It doesn't quite match up with you getting squirted with water at your 9D experience.
No, and it was probably the best day of my life, that 9D experience. But I would much prefer to be sprinkled with gold and sparsiones in the arena.
Yeah. Oh well, you've got to have some life goals.
Maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
What are we going to discuss now, Laura?
We are going to consider Pliny, the Elder.
The Elder.
The Elder, yes. So from his work, The Natural History, Book 8 specifically, and Book 8 is concerned with the nature of terrestrial animals.
Oh, okay.
We are at chapter 7 of said book, and this chapter is called The Combats of Elephants.
Lovely.
Yes, indeed.
Horrific, but lovely.
Yes. Yeah, there's some questionable description in this extract as well, which we can dissect later.
Should we do a trigger warning?
It's not upsetting. It's perhaps a bit brusque in some of the description. It's Pliny, yeah. He says it how it is. In the second consulship of Pompeius, at the dedication of the Temple of Venus Victrix, 20 elephants, or as some say 17, fought in the circus against a number of Gaetulians, who attacked them with javelins. One of these animals fought in a most astonishing manner. Being pierced through the feet, it dragged itself on its knees towards the troop, and seizing their bucklers, tossed them aloft into the air. And as they came to the ground, they greatly amused the spectators, for they whirled round and round in the air, just as if they had been thrown up with a certain degree of skill, and not by the frantic fury of a wild beast. Another very wonderful circumstance happened, and this you may disagree with the word wonderful. Oh. An elephant was killed by a single blow. The weapon pierced the animal below the eye and entered the vital part of the head. The elephants attempted to, by their united efforts, to break down the enclosure, not without great confusion among the people who surrounded the iron gratings. When, however, the elephants in the exhibition given by Pompeius had lost all hopes of escaping, they implored the compassion of the multitude by attitudes which surpass all description, and with a kind of lamentation bewailed their unhappy fate. So greatly were the people affected by the scene that, forgetting the general altogether and the munificence which had been at such pains to do them honour, the whole assembly rose up in tears and showered curses on Pompeius, of which he soon afterwards became the victim. Now,
hang on. So did he let the elephants go free?
I don't know.
But I need to know.
We'll leave that cliffhanger.
Oh, Lord.
But anyway, I did check another translation because when I read that, I thought that sounds like the elephants were wailing.
Yeah.
As in making a mournful, loud sound. Yes, or trumpeting, something like that. So but then I thought, okay, is that true? So I went to another translation, and that section, here we go. But Pompey's elephants, when they had lost all hope of escape, tried to gain the compassion of the crowd by indescribable gestures of entreaty, deploring their fate with a sort of wailing, so much to the distress of the public that they forgot their general and his munificence, carefully devised for their honour, and bursting into tears, rose in a body and invoked curses on the head of Pompey, for which he soon afterwards paid the penalty. So it's definitely indicating that the elephants were making a loud, mournful, sorrowful sound.
Oh, that's so harrowing.
I know, actually, it is quite harrowing, isn't it? I played it down at the beginning, but reading it back. And not only that, the interesting thing I took from this was the sound, so the sound aspect of sensory. So you've got 20, potentially 17 elephants all wailing.
Well, one's dead. So
oh, yes, one has been pierced. Yes, that's true. 19 or 16. Because of that wonderful incident.
That will make a difference to how I imagine this.
Yes, okay, good. So not only have we got those enormous wailing elephants, we've also got the crowd, potentially, thousands and thousands of spectators standing up, wailing, crying, cursing Pompey. Very loud, in summary. Probably just quite crazy to witness. To give some context, so Pompey had 3 consulships.
Right. Yeah.
This was in the second of his consulship. I know, yeah. Or maybe just, a decent general. I've got a soft spot for Pompey. But anyway, this was in his second consulship. So that's 55 BC. And you remember at the end, it said they showered curses on Pompeius, for which he soon afterwards became the victim. Now, I wasn't sure specifically what they're referring to there, but I could only think of he died 7 odd years later.
Okay.
So he was killed on the orders of Ptolemy in Egypt, Cleopatra's brother. So is that why?
He got trod on by an elephant the next day.
Maybe, yes. Maybe. Yeah.
But you're right. This must have been very loud.
Can you imagine it?
Overwhelmingly
loud, quite chaotic. And then it must have been, from the point of view of Pompey, this is meant to be an event where he was showcasing his wealth, his abilities as a general and his munificence. And to have the crowd turn on him, that must have not been in his plan.
No. I wonder if he got ushered out of the back door quite quickly by security.
Yeah, possibly.
Interesting.
Yes, so some harrowing descriptions of elephant injuries, but a really interesting description of just the sounds that they had the potential to erupt with.
Well, imagine if there was flapping on top of that.
With the awnings.
With the awnings.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
You could barely hear yourself think.
Yeah, totally. But also, if you've got a little bit before, so yes, you've got the crowd standing up to curse Pompey and crying, but then potentially you've got, when the animals were trying to break down the enclosure, you probably got some shouts of fear going on there. Maybe people near that enclosure, will I get trampled? Will I not?
Yeah.
So yeah, all sorts of loudness going on.
Well, so if we sum up a day at the games, in some ways, lovely. Colours dancing, shadow and light.
Bit of saffron and perfume.
Sprinklings to try and maybe cover up the smell of blood and wee.
Yeah.
And whatever sausage someone's eating next to you.
Yes. Yeah, we didn't mention sausage salads, but that's probably too obvious, isn't it?
And then we've got the noises of the elephants as they're trumpeting and trying to break out.
Yeah.
All 19 or 16 of them.
Yes. Shrieks and wails of the people who aren't faring so well in their battles, gladiators, animals, also prisoners. So they do at half time or lunchtime. I think they do a few. I think it would be more like public executions of criminals.
Oh, nice, relaxing. Go and get an ice cream.
Yeah.
Watch somebody.
Get some Haribo, glass of poor quality wine, watch a few public executions. Tick.
What a lovely day out.
But also then we've got the comedy of poor Latius running around with his seating plan, making sure that everyone's wearing the right clothes and sitting in the right seat.
Where's your toga? Where's your 400,000 sesterces?
Get out of row one.
What a sensory experience.
Yes. I'd pay good money for that.
Do you have a quiz for me?
Caroline, I was just going to suggest a little Quizlet. So this is going to be a standard part of the podcast going forward. Just a quiz that is loosely related to the topic or the event or experience that we've been talking about.
Quick fire
quiz. Yeah. So I've got 5 questions for you. They are multiple choice.
Okay.
Hit me. So, number 1. In what decade was the last public execution in the United States? And you have got the options of the 30s, the 40s, or the 50s. 1930s, 1940s, or 1950s.
Oh, okay. I thought this was going to be about our primary sources, but no. We've gone rogue.
I said loosely based on.
Okay.
Focus on the word loosely.
We'll remember. Okay, I'm going to say 1950s.
No.
Really?
No, 1930s. 1936, to be precise.
Won't remember that ever. Fine.
The last public execution in London.
Really focusing on public executions.
I really.
What about the lovely light and shadow dancing around the arena? How about that?
I've got some Colosseum-y based ones. Don't worry. Last public execution in London was in the 1800s, 60s, 70s, or 80s.
70s.
No, 60s.
Oh.
Okay, we'll go slightly more imperial now in nature.
Thank you.
In AD 80, the inaugural games of the Colosseum were held by the Emperor Titus. Approximately how many animals were killed over the 100 days that the games spanned?
Oh, we're keeping it jolly still.
Yes.
Okay.
I will give you 7,000, 8,000, or 9,000.
100 days.
Yeah.
Right. So if we do some really quick math, how many animals could I kill a day?
Probably none.
Probably none. How long is a day? 8 hours? 8 hours of games, shall we say?
Yeah.
10 an hour.
Break for lunch, because that's when the criminals
The
appeared.
criminals, obviously. So, what were the numbers again?
7,000, 8,000 or 9,000?
So I'm going to go for 8,000.
No, 9,000.
Oh, darn it.
Okay. Number 4. Now, these 100 Days of Games, we're still in the inaugural games of AD 80, took the life of how many gladiators? It is pretty bleak, isn't it? 1,000, 2,000 or 2,500?
Wow, they killed a lot of gladiators.
Yes. Yeah, this is bloodthirsty stuff.
Interesting.
However much perfume they whip out, it's pretty harsh.
You're going to need a lot of saffron water to cover up that amount of blood.
Exactly.
3,000.
That wasn't an option.
Oh.
1,000, 2,000, 2,500.
2,500.
No, 2.
Oh my.
You've got 0 out of 4.
Well, wait till you get a quiz.
Number 5. How many spectators could the Colosseum hold?
Oh, you know I'm bad at this.
So your options here are 45,000, 80,000 or 100,000.
85,000.
It wasn't 85, but I'm going to give it to you because you went the one in the middle, right?
I
Which
did.
is 80.
80,000.
Yay! 1 out of 5. Well, there we go. That's wrapped up our very first podcast episode. Hopefully we did press record.
We'll find out. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Here's a summary of the sources we talked about today. First up, Martial, a poet, born in Spain, but who spent most of his life in Rome. He was active in the 1st century of the Common Era, which is the early imperial age, where we've got the early emperors like Augustus, Nero, Claudius kicking around. Martial talks about the humdrum of everyday life. We've got Pliny the Elder, an author and naturalist, and also an early scientist. Born in Italy in the Como region, also active in the 1st century of the Common Era. And then we've got Lucretius, a poet. Lucretius wrote a work called De Rerum Natura, which translates as On the Nature of Things. He was born in Rome, and he was active a little bit earlier, so in the late Republic, 1st century BC. If you liked what you heard today, then please do take the time to like or subscribe to the podcast. You can find us under Sistery History on Instagram or email us at sisteryhistory@gmail.com. Special thanks to our composer Alice Morgan. You can find her on Instagram under Miss Alice Keys.